Hi, and welcome to Education Roundtable. My name is Larry Petraccaro, and I have with me tonight our new superintendent of schools, Dr. Ronald Taylor. Dr. Taylor has been the superintendent at Willingboro for the last 9 years or so, and in fact he has been in education totally for over 25 years. Originally from Detroit, and has spent some time in Atlanta, Washington, D.C. before he found the light and came to New Jersey. So we're going to have a chance to talk to Dr. Taylor tonight, get a little bit to know him a little bit, and to see how he is envisioning what has to be done within the school system. So Dr. Taylor, again, thank you for coming. So I gave a really brief little introduction, but so you've been in education for 20 years, but what got you really interested in that as a career? I mean, and what got you to the point where maybe you were a classroom teacher for a while, and then moving into administration?
Yeah, so first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm a lifelong educator. I have a lot of educators in my family. My sister is a teacher, had aunts and uncles who were teachers. It was kind of a natural fit. I began my journey as an educator, believe it or not, as a camp counselor. As a high school student, I worked as a camp counselor, and I fell in love with being able to manage and mentor younger kids. And when I went to undergrad, I had the thought that I would be a math teacher. I was really strong in math, and I had math teachers in my family. And I began to take my courses at Morehouse College in Atlanta. And I started to do the student teaching and the practicums that are a part of that, and I had to go into a kindergarten class to do part of our practicum, and I fell in love with that, and the teacher told me that I was a natural, and so I shifted to early childhood education, and ever since then I've been a teacher. Even in my current role, I view myself as a teacher. I'm just the lead teacher of a school district. When I first taught, my very first year was in Boston, Massachusetts. I helped to open a school that was it was a competitor to charter schools. Back then it was called a pilot school for math and science. I then spent the bulk of my career in the Washington, D.C. area. I was a teacher for 6 or 7 years. Majority was in elementary school. My first love was being a kindergarten teacher. I did that for 4 or 5 years before my principals decided to diversify me to help me see other grade levels, and I had a ball. I was an assistant principal for 3 years in Washington, D.C. as well. I helped to open a school in the Adams-Morgan area that had to be reconstituted. It was part of the T9 initiative. We had to rehire entire staff. It was a fantastic experience, and I was a principal for 6 years at Emory School in Washington, D.C. It was again an outstanding experience with a wonderful team, wonderful parents and students. We saw great gains, not just academically, but in our social emotional development of our young people. My superintendent in Washington, D.C., Dr. Clifford Janey, became the superintendent of Newark Public Schools here in New Jersey, and he gave me an opportunity to join his team as a regional superintendent. So I was there for a few years until he moved on, and I was very fortunate to be able to be a superintendent in Willingboro, New Jersey for Willingboro Public Schools for almost 9 years. In Willingboro, we developed a fantastic team. We were able to do lots of work, including a $70 million bond referendum to improve our school buildings. We saw a tremendous increase in graduation rate for 7 consecutive years. We saw a lot of great things together as a team in Willingboro, and I believe that that's probably what attracted me to this opportunity. There were a lot of similar challenges in Willingboro that I found here in this opportunity that I thought were a good fit, whether it be the construction that needed to happen, the long-term planning with the long-range facilities plan, as well as some of the reorganizing of grade levels and students and schools and the preschool expansion opportunities, etc. A lot of similar opportunities that I've learned a lot about in my previous experience.
Well, that raises a couple of questions in my mind, so it may deviate from some of these things I explained.
Sure.
You mentioned that you originally thought you'd be interested in math, and then you wound up in elementary education. So that was where you, or early childhood education.
Yes.
Is there a not a correlation, but when you teach math, have you found that a particularly challenging subject to teach to younger children? I mean, you've had that experience, I gather.
Yeah, I find that the children are already little geniuses. They already are critical thinkers, and they just need someone to be creative and patient, and give them the wait time to develop and to understand that none of us are identical. None of us are complete products when we come to school, and that I believe in the growth mindset, right? So none of us are complete. Even at 46 years old, I'm far from being a complete. I'm a better superintendent now than I was 9 years ago, and I hope to be better 9 years from now than I am right now. And I think that when you walk into a classroom, whether it's physics or a kindergarten classroom, that if the instructor has an open growth mindset about the abilities of their students, then the students will achieve. Students have to know that we are in this with them, that we're not here to fail them, that we have high expectations, and we're going to help and support them to meet those high expectations. And I used to welcome my students by saying, you know, man, you guys are so lucky. You're in the best class in the school, you know. And they would say, yes, we're in the best. You know, it's an intrinsic belief that you put in any of our students. And my favorite teachers, the ones that you remember the most, are the ones who had the highest expectations for you. They knew when you weren't giving your best. They wouldn't accept your failure. And I believe that any student in any situation, no matter what age, can be truly impacted by the adults who believe in them.
Well, that raises another interesting point that somebody once said to me, that when you have kids in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, they love going to school, and then something happens.
Mm-hmm.
Any idea what that something is? Why? I mean, is it something we do, or is it just growth?
You know, I wouldn't want to surmise on the entire educational spectrum, but I can give you what I have observed. It's a given that we know as educators, especially elementary educators, that for the first 2 or 3 years in school, students are learning to read. And then around 3rd grade, you begin to read to learn. And so if you have not mastered literacy, if you haven't mastered the ability to read, school then becomes more difficult for you. And so that's why there's so much research about the 3rd grade and how important 3rd grade is, because it's really one of the keys to literacy. And students begin to fall back in every other subject if they aren't strong readers by 3rd or 4th grade. And so some believe that that's one of the reasons why. There are others who believe that we take out play, that students are encouraged to play so much in early childhood because there's so much social development that occurs while you're playing. You're learning about each other, you're thinking about yourself, your community, your home, how you relate in the global society. You're learning a lot through play, through center-based education. And as students matriculate, we lose a lot of that social interaction in the work that we do. The work becomes more isolated. The students are at their own desk as they matriculate through school. There are less group learning that occurs, and so sometimes that if you're a social learner, you're losing that as you matriculate through school. There are so many theories about that. Some believe that that parents are less engaged as students go through school. You know, if you go to a parent-teacher conference for a kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, the house is packed. Maybe for high school students, parents are less engaged because they have others, younger children they have to attend to maybe, and they view those high school students as being more independent. So there are many reasons. But I think a lot of research focuses in on literacy and how important it is as you go through your elementary grades.
So that becomes, will that be a key focus of the elementary schools, under your tenure?
Definitely. I won't assume that we're not already doing that type of work. This is a short term for me. I'm only 5 months here, and I'm learning a lot every single day. My promise to the community when I first arrived was that my first focus was having a great opening of school. That the opening of school is very, very underrated and taken for granted. There's so much work that has to be done, whether it's master scheduling, purchasing materials, making sure that buildings are clean and safe, all of the transportation that has to occur, all of the hiring and HR processes. So making sure that we had a great opening, and we did, due to the work of many individuals in our school district, and then moving into a needs assessment mode. That's where I am now, where I'm meeting one-on-one with our principals, assistant principals, supervisors, all of our stakeholder groups, PTAs, etc., one-on-one with board members, and I am doing all those things to get a global view of our school district. And what that question you asked is a fantastic question. Will I still focus on early childhood and literacy in the early grades? Yes, regardless of all of the work that we've done, that's always going to be a focus of any great school district.
Yeah. You mentioned, I don't know if I've got the words right, but you mentioned something like a growth initiative or growth model.
Growth mindset.
Growth mindset. What do you mean by that?
So Dr. Dweck out of Stanford, she's a world-renowned educational theorist, and her work is on what's called mindset. And we use the word mindset very loosely, but she gets very specific when speaking about mindset. And a closed mindset means that you believe in talent, right? So, you're a math person, I'm a literacy person, it's okay that I won't be a math person because I just don't have that talent. Or, for example, some long-standing beliefs about girls can't be great in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. That boys are rambunctious and out of control, and that's just part of what their innate behaviors are. And what the growth mindset means or represents is that we all can grow. It's not based on an innate talent. Our performance is based on our work, our effort, our grit, and we really sell students short when we make assumptions about their ability based on our own prejudices, whether it be our beliefs about males and females, our beliefs about socioeconomic status, our beliefs about race, our beliefs about two-parent household versus one-parent household, or LGBTQ. Using any of those pieces to create bias when it comes to the ability of students is part of the closed mindset. Your growth mindset means that even though you may struggle is part of learning. And I'm not giving up on you because you're struggling. I'm not going to, if I call on you to answer a question, I'm not going to move off of you very quickly because you're not quick to answer. I'm going to take your time because I believe in you. I know that you can get this answer, or we're going to support you. And another part of the growth mindset is if a student's not successful, if I don't get a good grade on the test, what happens next? Do we move on in our subject matter, or do I give you more opportunities and support to be able to be successful? And so those are some pieces of the growth mindset.
Okay. Well, I got to say, I agree, because in my experience, I was a scoutmaster for a number of years. I found that we tend to underestimate kids, but I underestimated the amount of time. So we're going to have to take a break for a minute, and when we come back, we'll continue. So if you'll stay with us, we'll be back in a minute.
Thank you.
Dad, we need to talk. If you're not going to listen to me, who will you listen to?
Jeffrey!
Is that Marcia Gay Harden?
I think so.
You're getting older.
Not that old.
Your brain is changing.
That's what I was saying.
Honey, I've got experience with this. Jeffrey, brain health is all about making the most of your brain as you age.
Really?
Whoa, where did she go?
Learn what you can do to help keep your brain healthy at brainhealth.gov.
Okay, hi, and welcome back. Larry Petraccaro here with Dr. Ronald Taylor. This is Education Roundtable. And we've been talking with Dr. Taylor a little bit about his background, what got him interested in education, what brought him here, some of the stops he's made along the way. And we've talked about a couple of things, and one of the things, as we mentioned earlier, is Dr. Taylor has been superintendent for the past 9 years at Willingboro. So just as kind of a question, Dr. Taylor, how similar or different are Willingboro and Maplewood, South Orange?
Sure. Willingboro School District is in South New Jersey, maybe about 25 miles outside of Philadelphia. The districts are similar in that I would say that both are suburbs of large metropolitan areas. And I would also say that they're similar because they both have a suburban feel to them, single-family homes, etc. Both are similar because they both had similar needs. Willingboro had a dramatic need for construction to improve the facilities. Some of the facilities, had really poor HVAC efficiency to keep them warm. We had, of course, tremendous impact from Hurricane Superstorm Sandy as well. Both school districts had a similar need to do some type of reorganization because of perhaps overcrowding or budgetary issues. Both have loving families and fantastic kids. Both have a history of really outstanding arts programs, and both have wonderful families and teachers and principals, etc. The demographics are a bit different. The percentage of free and reduced lunch qualified students in Willingboro is higher than South Orange Maplewood School District. The demographics as far as the racial breakdown was different. Willingboro was probably closer to about 80-89% African American, but there were still differences within those demographics as well. When you talk about students who were recent immigrants, there are similarities there. The need for English as a second language to be offered to students was similar. Also, both districts recently took part in the preschool expansion opportunity presented by our new governor that allowed us to educate a lot more 3- and 4-year-olds. So there's some similarities there and differences.
Okay. We talked a little bit before about the importance of reading and literacy. How would you describe your educational philosophy or your management style? Because obviously it's a fairly good-sized school district.
Sure.
I mean, you've got, 7,000 or more than 7,000 students?
About 7,300.
7,300. Okay, so in terms of your educational philosophy, which should flow down through the district, and in terms of your management style, which I guess helps implement that, how would you describe that?
So I try to keep a thread of my educational philosophy through all of the opportunities that I have to communicate. So I'm really happy that you asked that question. I believe in being data driven, which means that we don't make haphazard decisions, right? That when it comes to making investments of the public's funds, we're using data to make those decisions. When principals and teachers are making decisions about students, that we're using data as a portion of those decisions that we make. When I present to the Board of Education, I always try to include data that makes them more comfortable and confident in what I'm presenting. I also, of course, believe in being child-centered. We have our district meetings in schools. So when the cabinet, the school leadership team, we have our meetings, we have them in schools every couple of weeks. When the principals and I have our monthly meetings, we have them in schools. The assistant principal meetings are in schools. And why do we do that? Because we want to always remind our leaders why we are here. We're here because of the students. And so for a school business administrator whose background is business and who's trying to balance our budget, they may not have a chance to go to schools that often, but when they do go, in these meetings that I plan, it really sharpens their lens to see the reality of the dollars and decisions, the dollars that are a result of the decisions that he or she may make. I also am always focused on being a servant leader. If I had to describe my style of management, I believe that it's my job to remove the impediments from those who are teaching our kids. So if a teacher or a principal or a parent alerts me to an issue that's a problem, I want to really jump on it to try my best to remove it. I'm also research-based. I don't believe in allowing every Tom, Dick, and Harry and every newfangled product to get in front of our kids. So I have a very discerning eye and high expectations for anything that we're purchasing or any vendor that we're partnering with. I want to know how this item or product worked with students who are similar to ours. So we drive a hard bargain. You know, we view ourselves as being the filter and the conduit to keep things away from our district and our kids that don't deserve to be here. Sorry, it's a long answer, but
No, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I sometimes used to think that that if you're not careful, you get fad-driven, and that's kind of the opposite of being data-driven, as you were talking about. So yeah, I can appreciate that, and having the meetings in the schools makes a lot of sense to me. And some of the work I've done, not in education, obviously, but it was so clear that if you're not close to your customers, you start to serve yourself, not to serve.
Exactly.
So you talked about being, a servant model, and it's always nice to know who your customers are. And in this case, it's the kids. For us, it was maybe something different. You've inherited some pretty big initiatives, I guess. Specifically, yes. I think with the there's two, but the one that I'm wondering about now is the construction, the reconstruction, the refurbishing of the schools. I mean, can you give us a little bit of a background on that? It's how much, and
Sure.
Are all the schools going to be impacted?
Yes.
And do you have a certain overarching goal and I don't know what that might be, in how you decide on how you're specifically going to proceed at the individual schools?
Sure. So I have experience with these type of projects. My dissertation was on the impact of school facilities on student achievement, with the focus on math. And so I've always been passionate about how the surroundings of our students impact them. One of the theories that all educators have to learn when we're in undergraduate is about Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, and how we can't perform if we're cold, if we're hungry, if we're afraid. That we are impacted by our surroundings. So I take the construction of our buildings very seriously. And I also made a promise to the board during my interview process that I would not make us go back to the chalkboard just because I'm the new guy. I wanted to value all the work that was done in preparation for this work. So we've submitted, prior to my arrival, our plans for the long-range facility initiative to the state. And so the state had already approved those plans initially, making them approvable. And so after it came back, I arrived in mid-July, and during that time we had our meeting of the Board of School Estimate that gives the final approval for this project. And so I was able to give a very brief statement about my support for the project, and then the board was very, very kind to approve this for our students. And then we gave that final approval back to the state. And so now the architects are going through and doing really deep testing to make sure that all the plans are going to be able to still move forward. And so some examples of what we're expecting. Very obviously, we are, some say overcrowded. I would say that we have a great problem, that we have lots of kids who want to go to our schools, and so we have to make more space. And so part of this plan, one of the major parts of it, is expanding the footprint of all of our elementary schools. And I'm so happy that we'll be getting rid of some of those temporary parts of our buildings that have been with us for a long time, much longer than they were intended. We'll be improving our HVAC, health and safety systems throughout our buildings, and this will probably take between 2 and 3 years. We're trying to be very transparent with this process. We have a digital newsletter that we put out every month, that has a nice chunk of information on where we are in the process. The architects are working closely with our school business administrator and myself. We're having committee meetings with the board committees, updating them on our construction process. We're having meetings with our principals, getting their feedback on the designs and the colors, even down to how sustainable and green these plans are going to be. And last but not least, we're doing geothermal testing of all the grounds to see if that's an opportunity for us to be green, even in our HVAC processes.
Pick up some heat from below.
Exactly, exactly.
Well, you talked about making the footprint of the buildings bigger. Would that be going up, going out? I mean, in some of the schools, it would seem like there's not a lot of space. I mean, there must be an additional challenge.
Exactly, it is, and one of the biggest challenges is if you have to demolish the temporary classrooms, you have to do it in a way that you're not going to lose space before you gain space. So timing is very important. And then when you build your new sections, you have to make sure that they connect to the old buildings in a way that makes sense and preserves the beauty of the buildings, while at the same time being efficient, and making sure that, when you go through a building, some of these buildings are more than 100 years old, and when you're pulling out HVAC units and all of the room ventilators, and I don't want to get too technical, but some of those pieces are different generations, so that's why they don't work that well.
Yeah, no.
And so when you take all that stuff out, you have to be very intentional in your planning, and even in the best plans with construction, you can still have a delay that you have no control over.
Well, isn't there probably a point with the age of the schools and the age of the equipment in it that some of that stuff may be almost impossible to repair? You almost have to replace it.
100%, yeah, I agree. You have to, when you have a 60, 70-year-old boilers, you can't repair those things. And one really funny quick anecdote about that, when I was in Willingboro and we did this kind of work, we had boilers the size of a huge room, and you put the new ones in and it's the size of a couch, and more efficient. So the technology has definitely gone very quickly when it comes to the HVAC work that we need to do.
Are there any of the schools that will be less impacted than others? I mean, there's some that maybe there'll be you'll have to build another wing, and others that you may just have to replace the HVAC equipment?
No, there are. For the elementary schools especially, they all are gaining more room, more seats, not just improvement of infrastructure, because we need expansion to be able to balance our school district. So I would say that the elementary schools are getting more expansions than the secondary schools are.
Yeah, and that's always difficult in a way, because you have to look at growth projections, and nothing is simple. And but this conversation has been very enjoyable. I'm afraid we're just about out of time, I do appreciate your coming, Dr. Taylor. You mentioned the digital newsletter, so just in the couple of seconds we have left, if somebody was interested, someone without kids in the school, how would they get access to that?
So we have our digital newsletter, which is on the S'mores platform, and it's available on our website, and also on our social media. And if anyone has an issue or problem getting to it, they can call our offices or email me directly. We have a tenet of being very responsive, so we respond to emails almost immediately.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you for joining us on Education Roundtable.